Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ben Crossman, and we have a great show planned for you today because the entire show will be dedicated to our regular correspondent here, Mr. Scott Schober, author of Hacked Again, and of course, the CEO of Berkeley Varitronics Systems, and an all-around very interesting guy with a great take on, just cybersecurity and just making sure that anything that you can do or anything that you should be concerned about when it comes to keeping yourself safe on the internet, this is going to be your go-to segment. So really looking forward to that. Before we jump into it, though, a couple of things, including computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything from the show notes to the live video feed to the social media contests brought to you by Logitech and more. You can check that out all at computeramerica.com, as well as a link to our guest website. And of course, any articles or anything that we talk about here on the program today. Now, you can find that there. Let's see. Anything that I need to mention? No, I think we are good to go. So why don't we go ahead, bring on our guest, and just get this conversation started. So as I said before, no stranger to the show. If you have listened before, he is on the last, might have to change. We might have had to change it for this month, but he's on the last Wednesday of every single month, and he is the one, the only, Mr. Scott Schober. So Scott, welcome back onto Computer America. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Wonderful to be here again, Ben. Thanks.
Our pleasure. So, yeah, before we get started, how you doing? Hopefully you're doing well. And second of all, give us a bit of background for anyone out there who may not know your backstory.
Yeah, absolutely. What I'm doing is running a privately held wireless security company. We focus a lot on wireless tools to keep you safe. We sell to government facilities, to universities, to private companies as well, and I also focus a lot on cybersecurity. I present often and share best practices, how people can keep safe from being the victim of a cyber breach, and had the privilege of writing a book, Hacked Again, as you mentioned there, where I share my story of how I was targeted and hacked, and they continually go after me, so the fun never ends. So it's a great opportunity to learn what not to do and also what to do when you become a victim there. And I love sharing my stories and the things I'm learning on my journey here, how to keep safe to your listeners and many others around the globe.
Yeah, and I think you've picked out a very good medley of of topics and articles that really show that everyone from the Girl Scouts to many other institutions out there, including even election software. You can hammer all day long. You want the the virtues of the basics. Don't click links. Don't don't go to weird websites. But these things still happen. So obviously, I'm happy that you're here. So let's go ahead and get started with our first topic. And I think this is a pretty good opener, a nice easy one, where it's kind of a look back at 2018 and the largest data breach penalties. And before we even talk about who had the largest ones and things like that, why don't you kind of discuss the rationale behind a penalty for being the victim of a data breach? Because I guess some people who maybe they don't, who maybe come at this and they think, well, it's kind of like, I don't know, someone mugs you and then the government charges you for being mugged, something of that nature. I mean, if you could real quick just kind of describe why there are even penalties for data breaches in the first place.
Sure. And it does seem a little strange at first, but when you look at the bigger picture, a lot of it has to do with failure to come clean and to be honest. Many of these companies, and these are large companies that make millions, if not billions of dollars upon the backs of consumers, and when they don't fairly come out and tell their customer base that, hey, your information has been compromised, consumers are in the dark, and they in turn then can have their credit card compromised, somebody does identity theft or medical theft or something else where things are used against them, and now they're left cleaning up the mess. The only thing that really motivates companies, unfortunately, is when it touches their wallet. So if large corporations realize, wow, if we don't fully disclose what happened to us, why it happened, how it happened, and what we're going to do to fix it, and basically follow the law, because really the federal law mandates that there's breach notifications that are in place that companies have to follow. If they don't follow the law and they don't become honest with their customers, they're going to slap them on the wrist and give them a penalty, and millions of dollars, or in this case, the list here, the biggest offender is really Uber, and we talked about that many a times.
Yeah.
I think great app, great concept. The management of the company, the way they handled their breach debacle is just a disaster. I have a whole chapter dedicated to the Uber debacle in my second book that's going to be released probably later this year, and it just makes me laugh every time I hear about how they mess up and then mess up again and mess up again. And they make this top list here, and because it just from the sheer dollar amount and how bad the blunder is there, that was back in 2016, 600,000 drivers and 57 million user accounts that were actually breached. And just in short, if you remember, instead of reporting it, they kind of covered it up. They paid a bunch of hackers $100,000 to keep it quiet, and they disguised it as a bug bounty. So that's kind of like the worst possible thing to do. Cover it up, lie, misinform people, don't come clean, and don't report it right away. So it was a series of dumber and dumbest things that you could possibly do. And I think the takeaway in all of these cases, if you are compromised as a company, small or big, don't wait until you report it. Be honest with your customers. Be honest with your shareholders. Be honest with your employees, or it just turns into a big pile of mess.
Right, and really that's so that explains why there are fines and penalties for essentially being the victim of these kind of things. And you're right, the first one on the list here was Uber. We did mention that before, and yeah, it's hard to imagine Uber ever sat back and said, we should try being open and honest about what happened to us, and that person was probably fired.
Yes.
So that one was pretty ridiculous and very interesting to hear that, hey, it's going to be in your new book. I think covering like a Hall of Fame best of worst practices would be very interesting. But this list that you also have here include number 2, Yahoo. Now, Yahoo was one of those that it was like the gift that kept on giving, because I don't know if at the time that it started to come out, Yahoo was looking to be purchased by it was
Verizon.
Yeah, that's right, Verizon. And so Yahoo, they had purchased like AOL and stuff like that. They were essentially a bunch of properties that, they still had web traffic and they still had search results, but they were, kind of on the out. And I don't know if they were using these breaches and these hacks as a way to manipulate, the price that they were willing to pay, but very strategically it seemed like, and with Yahoo in particular, the full extent of their hacking liability wasn't clear for a while there, was it?
Yeah, and you make a brilliant point, because that's kind of the real takeaway with the Yahoo story. It really started back in 2013 with this ludicrous, massive security breach. There's about 3 billion plus internet users around the globe, 3 billion. That's the entire database for Yahoo, about 3 billion email accounts. So basically, everybody that's on the internet, and just about everybody has a Yahoo or a Gmail account, and they use that for whatever. they want to get email when it's not maybe something critical, but basically it affects almost every person that's on the internet. And to me, that's what's so mind-boggling. And it took them 3 years to disclose this and come out clean and say, yeah, well, we knew about it for 3 years. The 3 billion customers' email accounts have been compromised. Now, that's scary. And again, everybody may not check their Yahoo account every single day. I hear that often. I don't have a Yahoo account, but maybe they check it once a month or a couple times a year. I don't know.
You know, and just personally, Yahoo was like the alternative to Hotmail back in the day, and it was like maybe 2005, 2006. Before Gmail hit the market, Yahoo was the de facto. It'd be like if in today's day and age, it would be like if Gmail lost all of their information. Yahoo was the go-to.
Yeah, well said. Or back in the day, I had AOL, and many millions and millions of other early internet users had AOL as well. Once, if they ever get compromised, forget it. Same thing. And now they're part of this conglomerate of compromises anyway.
Right, and I guess and we're gonna speed through this list just so we don't spend the entire show talking about just this one article. But the big thing about that one was that a lot of people, they are very poor about their, I guess, digital hygiene, where you could have like the start of the email, even if you don't still have like the @Yahoo, you may still have the beginning part of your email, and you may still be using the password from whenever you created that. That thing. So hackers would go in, have this massive 3 billion database of possible password combinations and account combinations that they could try everywhere. And it really did cause a lot of damage.
Yeah, and that's so easy to add that little bit of compromised information to things you could socially engineer off someone. I saw a show last night, just to comment on it briefly, because it kind of parallels this. And I can't remember what it was, a news program, but there was somebody going around with a microphone, randomly going up to people on the street and saying, hey, we're talking about password security here, and we got a question, what's your password? And most people, they'd hesitate a little bit, and they'd say, well, I don't give it out. And they're like, well, do you use like anything specific to make up your password? And they'd say, yeah, my dog's name. And they're like, oh, you have a dog, that's so cute. What's your dog's name? Oh, my dog's name's Fido. Oh, really? That's great. And, oh, did you go to school around here? Yeah. Well, what high school did you go to? Like they would start disclosing things if you talk fast to them. I was laughing so hard, and it was just a simple interview at random, and person after person after person fell for it and disclosed what made up their password, and then they would sync back and repeat. So your actual password that you use for all your sites is ... and they'd say, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with this stuff.
It's social engineering in real time, and looks like and I just had to Google it. Looks like Jimmy Kimmel Live did that a couple of times. So, but yeah, it's social engineering in real time, and really it's really a problem that reuse of passwords. And we've talked about password managers and things like that, but yeah, that's why Yahoo, even if 3 billion defunct emails were stolen, the damage is still going to be there. So there's that one. And like you said, and like the article said, I believe $85 million. And then it was $85 million in the penalty. But as I said at the beginning, the price of the acquisition that Verizon was going to buy Yahoo for, that went down by chunks every time a new story or a new revelation came out, where it was a couple billion, and then it would drop and drop and drop and drop. So that one had a huge price tag associated with it. This next one, Tesco Bank, 21 million. UK, so maybe I'm just not really unfamiliar with that one. But do you know anything about the Tesco Bank hack? I'm sorry, the fine?
You know what? Other than it's listed here, no. I can't say. Like you said, it's mentioned here that it's a UK, and unfortunately, probably Americans don't pay a whole lot of attention to things like that. But basically, it's saying here in this little blurb here, information from 9,000 customers were stolen back in 2016. I guess it caught up with them, and I think with a lot of these things, especially with in the world of EU. The new data breach clauses have changed in the way people have to report and respond, because the GDPR is starting to come into effect, and any company that suffers these data breaches have to report this properly, or there's a tremendous amount of financial fines that'll be levied. So I think what's going to start happening, I think British Airways recently, that's a potential lawsuit. I think mentioned at the end of the article there, could be in upwards of $650 million. So it's unbelievable the amount that lawsuits that'll happen when a lot of people's personal information is compromised, especially if it's credit card information and other things like that, where these people are going to be victims and there'll be a million tiny lawsuits. It's going to be heavy. So the fines are going to be imposed are going to be unbelievable. So the companies, when they're compromised and find out, they got to come out and be honest. The Equifax, the Facebook, the Anthem mess, all these guys, everything that came out very late in the game. Going forward, if they don't report it sooner, the fines are going to increase drastically.
I think that is, that's kind of the point, is that up until this point, it's been, we keep talking about these fines, and even with Uber, I think that Uber, they're still kind of a startup, they're not that old of a company. The first couple of years are very crucial. They're everywhere, but they're still growing. They're still trying to wrangle in investors. They're still trying to get on solid financial footing. And unfortunately, $148 million sounds like a lot of money, but it probably saved them even more money by looking like they were a responsible, sound, not hacked company. They probably, got more investors and just funding than, paying this fine altogether. That's what has to change in the future, is that it actually hurts a company to not disclose it. Because if you're just waiting for market influences, in a lot of cases, just even through things like stock prices, it's gonna be in their benefit to keep these things hidden. So we have to make that the other way around.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Many of these different breaches, if you analyze them closely, the reason or the motive besides the embarrassment to public is more a monetary sense. They were trying to get X number of $1 billion to raise in funding, and they said, well, let's keep it under wraps and keep it quiet until we get past this round of funding and the dust settles and we move on and get our golden parachute. And a lot of these companies, I think Uber included there, it made sense for them, but it doesn't make sense when you look back in hindsight. It's really corrupt what they're doing.
Yeah, it is. So that's one. The full list is available at the show. We have a link to the article that you submitted, and it's a very, very cool kind of article, because I think, and actually I know that I cover this kind of thing, so often. I know that you do too at your job, and it's like, I look at these, I'm like, didn't that happen like 3-4 years ago? And it's like, no, we're just finding out about this year. Like,
Exactly.
the news moves so fast, and it's nice to sit back and really take stock of what happened this year, so you can, kind of come to terms with it once again. So there's that one. Let's go ahead, swap on over to some of these other stories. Why don't we go from hacking to hacking, and we're gonna come back to the SmartFlow, and let's talk about the Girl Scouts. And fun fact: the Girl Scouts, the last time they were on the show here on Computer America, I want to say it's about 2 years ago, which is obviously too long ago. But they actually do a lot. I think we had them on when they introduced their first, cybersecurity badge, or proper way to not be compromised on the internet. Like, they're starting to hand out badges for being a good net citizen. And so the Girl Scouts, like most organizations, you wouldn't think it, but they're getting more digital. They're signing up online. You sign up with the organization, so on and so forth. I know they're more than just cookies, is what I'm trying to get at. So you have this post here. This is from Threat Post, and Girl Scouts issues a data breach warning to 2,800 members. Talk about this and talk about the implications of, maybe even users being so young and being compromised as well.
Yeah, I think this one just caught my eye, obviously, because probably all of us have had Girl Scout cookies at one point or another, and I naturally associate the term cookies from the internet to cookies and started laughing when I was reading this one. But it appears that, a hacker basically targeted and got a specific information to access some email, dug in a little bit deeper, and then got access to an entire chapter here and sent out kind of like an email blast, but it was really like a phishing attempt in a sense to these 2,800 girls and their associated families because they had their personal information, and they were able to compromise their names, their birth dates, their insurance policy numbers, the health history about them, their home addresses. All of these type of things, as we always have talked about, can be used as little pieces to do a social engineering attack. They could be used to put together for identity theft efforts. A ton of information like this they could garnish and then use it to go on to create other cyber crimes and attempts to take money from them and attack them easily. So I think the key here is we have to be careful. Sometimes it appears like it's within our own organization, within our own company, that an email may go out, and we have to really be careful because in this case, it looked like it was from something internal to the chapter there. It was from the Girl Scouts issuing some type of email, and if somebody clicked on it, it was really truly a phishing scam. So it just shows at what lengths I think these clever hackers will go to try to compromise people's information.
Yeah, and by the way, the article actually does include a couple of the badges I was talking about.
Oh yeah, I see it there at the bottom. Yes.
Yep, Cybersecurity Basic Badge, Cybersecurity Safeguard Badge, and Cybersecurity Investigator Badge. I guess some of the members of the chapter could probably do well with a bit of brushing up on that. But one part of this seems a little, I don't know, kind of disingenuous because here almost at the bottom of the article, the Girl Scouts or the GSOC was hijacked for only one day from September 30th to October 1st, and they said, out of an abundance of caution, we're notifying everyone whose information was in the email accounts. And I think probably better than most that having access to an account for one day, don't they usually, kind of like most hackers don't leave the information that they're looking for where it's at and then just try to like pull and pick from it as they kind of need it. Even if it's just one day, wouldn't they have pulled the entire email account and re-downloaded it and backed it up somewhere else?
Absolutely, you're 100% right. In fact, that's a very common method, and often even in the media and researchers for cybersecurity, we hear this when different sites are compromised, especially a lot of the dating sites and other things, when the government was compromised and different information was posted on different forums, people went on and they downloaded, and hackers will go on and download all of that information and keep it stored offline in a database so they can go back through that treasure trove over time. And they may take months, it may take a year before they piece together some information about this particular Girl Scout and find that they got part of her Facebook login information and then use that to go onto her bank account and log in because they've got some combination of information that allows them to hack an account. So yeah, never assume just because it's up there, even if it's up there for 30 minutes. Once it's out on the web, people have access to it. They will download it and store it offline. And usually it's up on the web. It's also in a redundant spot on a secondary server as a backup. So nothing is 100% safe once it gets out there, I guess it's safe to say. So they got to change their passwords. They got to very carefully look at their statements. They got to make sure that their credit is frozen, so on and so forth, the natural precautions that anyone would take. And in fact, one of the tips, and I'll just weave it in now if I may, that I've been sharing with people at a couple recent presentations, and a few of them have actually done this and followed up with me and told them, thank you, hey, I tried this, it was great, And I've done this myself, is doing a dark web audit. We're starting to hear about it on TV shows and this and that, and these different companies perform dark web audits, blah, blah, blah. There's this company, Cyberlytica, and I've tried it, and I recently tried it, and I had 3 accounts that were flagged as being potentially compromised. And I tell you what, it got my attention. I went on those 3 accounts immediately and changed my login information. How they did it, I had great passwords, this and that, but what does it tell you? Sometimes it even happens from the inside of a company where they're compromised or passwords are given out or some other means, maybe not even by the fault of myself or user's fault because they have a weak password. So even if you have a strong password, it's nice to go down in the dark web and crawl through that information and see if anywhere your password or your user login credentials are showing up, because hackers are down there selling it. So it's not that expensive there. I forget, $10 or $20 to have a couple emails scanned. It's well worth it, I feel.
How would you kind of say this weaves into? I think we've mentioned here on the show before. Have I been pwned.com is another one where they check for certain usernames and passwords. I guess it's kind of the same thing, but I guess maybe one has a better, I guess kind of methodology.
Well, yeah, it's very similar to that, but in this particular case, this dark web audit is specific to an email, and a lot of people will use a specific email to sign in as their username when they're going on to LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever the case may be. They'll set aside a dedicated email or a Gmail account or Yahoo account, so they want to know if that specifically was compromised because they have that associated to their login for specific accounts, and that's when it's really helpful. So you can kind of do an independent audit from a security perspective and see if that ended up floating around on the dark web on any of these scary forums or is being sold as a package or other information. Just having that alert ahead of time allows you to immediately change the passwords so nothing could happen that day or that moment there. Because, again, they don't always react instantly. Somebody may buy it, sit on it a month or two, then start hacking or compromising. So it gives you the upper edge to react to it a little bit and gives you a heads up. That's what I love about it. It's being proactive and fighting back. It doesn't solve the problem from it happening in the first place, but it gives you some inside information. At least it empowered me, and I said, holy cow, I can't believe these 3 accounts were compromised. I thought I was doing everything perfectly, 100%. Guess what? Wake up, Scott. Even though I was hacked and hacked again, I've been hacked again. So you go back and change it immediately.
Right. So yeah, and obviously many are offering resources. Although I mean, after the Equifax hack, I think I don't know if it's best to maybe just kind of clean the slate every 3 months. I think that's obviously a bit hard for a lot of people. But also after the Equifax hack, I believe you agreed with me that, and I'm sure many people said it. At this point, just assume it's out there. I mean, assume that your email address to some extent has been compromised, that your favorite password combination has been compromised, and just assume, because what's the worst that's going to happen? That's all we can say. So there you go, Girl Scouts, data breach, and like they said, it was only one chapter. It was not the entire organization. So hopefully everyone who was hacked has been gotten in touch with. Let's go ahead and talk about. All right, so we have like 2 minutes before we're going to head to break, Scott. But sure. If you'd like to introduce the 5th annual SmartFlow Anti-Piracy Summit. Unfortunately, first time I've heard of an anti-piracy summit. Just give us some background on what this is.
Yeah, absolutely. I was able to, a couple weeks back, go out to San Jose, California, and give a keynote here. And it was a really cool event because they focused all on anti-piracy. And I realized people pirate software. I did it as a kid, not for monetary gain, but copying games and everything else. But there's a much more sinister side to this where, for the most part, it's been identified that in China, many people in China are stealing copies and hacking the registration codes for highly expensive software. And this may be like Autodesk or AutoCAD or other software that may cost thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, or accounting packages or whatever. They're then copying it, and then they're selling it back to the U.S. And in some cases, it might be a $10,000 seat of software, and they'll sell it back to the U.S. for $1,000. So I learned an immense amount at this conference, and I gave a keynote there and got to meet everyone and really got to understand the importance of having proper protections and how they actually audit and prevent all of the piracy. And that's what their software really is about, to actually take control and manage the seats and the licenses of your software, and they can actually track and see where it pops up based upon the IP address. If being used somewhere else in the world or an unauthorized copy, and then you can go pursue it, shut it down, and negotiate a settlement with them. But it just opened my eyes to how big of a problem it is. Fascinating.
Absolutely. So everyone, we'll be right back, and we're going to talk a bit more about this. Everyone, Scott Schober, author of Hacked Again, and of course, Computer America. We will be right back. Everyone, stay tuned.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. That's 800-215-4461.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
And welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is 32 minutes past the hour as we continue on. And by the way, if you missed any part of today's show, feel free to pirate us wherever podcasts are heard. And you can download our show and listen to it at your convenience. And so far it's been a great conversation. You should definitely go back and check that out. There's a page for, how to find all that stuff at computeramerica.com. But everyone, we continue on with Scott Schober. And we were just about to get into SmartFlow and this, in this Anti-Piracy Summit. And I guess so, obviously, you mentioned that this is to kind of raise awareness and to, really highlight the technology that goes into this. I mean, talk about, how do I say this right? Talk about their mission, obviously, to reduce piracy, but at the same time, piracy is really, really hard to stamp out when it's not for when it's not for financial gain, when it's just one person downloading songs or movies, illegally. That's kind of hard to really pinpoint and say that person needs to be punished versus, I guess, a much broader, much more damaging version of piracy, maybe, full-blown just copyright theft.
Yeah, and I think to your point, because it's a good point, the average user that steals this or that, honestly, nobody's probably going after them, or it's very unlikely. It's stealing a song or copying software or something else. Maybe they'll get a letter, maybe they'll slap on the wrist. With the larger packages where there is thousands or $10,000s of dollars per license or seat, and a company may use 100 copies within its organization, that's some serious money to be lost by a large organization. And I think that's where they'll come in and they'll actually use products such as SmartFlow Compliance there to make sure that the software is carefully tracked, how many seats are out there, has the person been paying up every year for the regular registration fees and usage fees or not. They gave a great example in another presentation, and there was a case where there was a Chinese company that was stealing actual software, pirating it, and they amassed over $1 billion
Wow.
of software that was stolen that they were able to prove. And the nice part about this, and it was called, I guess the website at the time, and there was a book there too that we got as attendees, it was called Crack 99. And they were actually able, this was the first case of a large a situation where they could capture the individual, the pirates in a sense, in China, and prosecute them and arrest and fine them. So basically they shut it down. It was the largest software ring of pirating software. And that to me shows success, when they could point to something and say, wow, here's an example. Because how many of these stories do we talk about every month where there's hackers and cybercrime, and you don't know who the culprits are? They rarely get caught. They rarely get fined.
Mm-hmm.
So in this instance, it was really exciting to hear the whole story, how successful the ring was at stealing software and pirating it, but how effectively they fought back, tracked them down, caught them, arrested them, and fined them. That to me is justice in a sense, and you feel good. To me, it hits home more personally as I run a company, and we sell software. We sell seats to our software. In fact, I just had an example today. A customer bought two of our products, the U.S. government customer. They did not pay for seats of software. And they tried to call up and say, hey, we bought this product recently. You forgot to send the software. Would you please send it over to me? And they were paying it. And it was only $250 a seat. But there's an example. They could easily socially engineer an employee out of it. And we said, oh, what's your registration code? What's that? What do you mean? I never got one. Oh, then you didn't pay for the software. So even somebody as the U.S. government, which we assume is going to be honest in this case, was not very honest with our company. So software can get compromised through social engineering or just downright hacking through and trying to figure out what the keys and registration codes are. So you got to protect your intellectual property, and you got to get some money for it, and it's all fair and good. But some people just don't play by the rules anymore.
Yeah, it's and obviously, like you said, no one really cares about the individual who's, one movie, one song, whatever. Definitely shouldn't do that, but overall, I think everyone eventually pays the price for these large companies and other people really taking a lot of money out of hands of others. Like then that just you have to factor that into the cost of just take your business for instance. Everyone else who does pay has to pay for the fact that some people, a minority, are not going to pay, and it's just the cost of doing business. So yeah, it's unfortunate. And by the way, very cool that hey, you're the keynote speaker at this one. So yeah, and let's see, this happens. Let's see, I'm trying to find a date here. This happens when and where? Again, I'm sorry.
Oh, this was recently in October, towards the beginning of October,
yeah.
like first week of October, I think.
Right, yeah.
The dates are on.
October 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. There we go.
Yeah, so it was a fairly recent, and it was a great event, and it was nice because it wasn't just SmartFlow employees, but really it was their customer base that was brought in. So I got to interact with their company, but also their customer base, and hear real-world scenarios and stories, what they did to keep their software protected and safe, which was great.
Right. Perfect. So let's see, there's that one. And by the way, like I said, first time I've heard of an anti-piracy summit. Very, very interesting. So there's that one. Let's see. How about we talk real quickly about... all right. So we have two more data hacking, and then we'll wrap it up with with some tips and this how can you keep your small safe how to keep your businesses safe from cyber attacks. But let's talk about the white hat hackers of our election software. So over the past couple of days, if you've been listening here on the show, we have been talking about there was an instance where elections were being where votes were being changed in a Texas voting booth in the machines. And that turned out to be faulty software. That was not a hacking, that was faulty software. So ever since then, though, we've been tracking down different instances where you have the possibility of, hacks happening in the election. So far, very, very minimal to no votes have ever been changed through straight hacking. No one's ever been able to get into a system, change all the votes to one candidate, and get away with it, as far as we know, I guess. But you have an article here from The Hill talking about white hat hacking and I guess this is for letting people try their darndest to do exactly that.
Yeah, and what I liked about this, and again, I personally try to avoid the world of politics, but I like the angle on this story because it brings in the technical aspect of here and helping us to appreciate that over the past 10 years, there have been reported and known vulnerabilities in the election machines throughout the United States, and they've classified more than half of them are flawed and have known vulnerabilities. This is according to the Wall Street Journal now. But nothing has been done in the past 10 years. Not one thing has been done. So the opinion contributor for this article basically throws out there, hey, since nothing's been done in 10 years, and recently Congress did not pass this Secure Elections Act since the 2 years ago, since the Russians started to disrupt and interfere with our elections, why not let white hackers come in and actually try to hack some of the software in the machines and see if they can expose the vulnerabilities. Once vulnerabilities are exposed, clearly they have to do something because now the public knows and other hackers know. So it kind of starts the fuse. It makes government agencies do something about it so they could patch, so they could fix it quickly. And a good example to contrast it is you look at the Google Bug Bounty Program. Just this year alone, there were 470 vulnerability reports that were issued and qualified. That means there's 470 major bugs that Google paid money out to hackers, white hat hackers, to hopefully expose these bugs so now they can focus in and fix the problems. And why is that so important? Imagine 470 different possible breaches or hacks or vulnerabilities where Google could have been compromised, or more importantly, their customers' information could have been compromised. It's all the unknowns. Well, why not approach that same philosophy from the government side and let these white hat hackers go at the election software, go at the hardware, and expose those vulnerabilities? They know they're out there, but they don't do anything about it. But having this known, identified thing with a fuse on it, hey, you've got 6 months to fix this or 3 months to fix this, or I'm going to go public, and then every hacker in the world will know about it, it really should get them moving and make changes. That's basically the concept here, which I kind of commend because it makes sense.
It's and I mean the bug bounty program has been utilized by a lot of different companies. I can't say by never really by the U.S. government. I'm sure that they do penetration testing often, but the U.S. government does not have a standing order to share any kind of bug bounty with them. In fact, in a lot of cases, if you are found to have hacked into, let's say, law enforcement or FBI, CIA, whatever, and you share what you've done, they'll actually throw you in jail before they'll hand over a check because you went somewhere you were not supposed to. I do think that bug bounty programs do work when used correctly, i.e. Uber, but the problem I think with the election that I've heard is that some places don't even use electronic voting at all. Those, I guess you really don't have to worry about hacking. You just have to worry about miscounting. Other ones, the machines that are used in electronic voting are not standardized across the United States. They are county to county, district to district, state to state, and the software behind them, I think this is maybe even a bigger problem than even possible hacking. The software behind all of these voting booths, they are from independent contractors. They are from private companies, and there is no guarantee of standard of quality of any kind of common user interface. I think that might be a problem, is that you can have a bug bounty program, but what happens when every single state has to have a different one because we don't have any kind of standardization for voting booths? Yeah,
I mean, that makes perfect sense, and there should be. for something that's considered important in an election process, there should be standardization. It really should be federally mandated. I'm surprised they haven't come up with a department that will specifically set out a set of standard rules for all of the states that must comply, the way they handle the information when it's at rest, when it's in motion, that it's completely encrypted. I mean, to your point, imagine if they have a great system that collects all the votes and it goes onto somebody's PC. Now they stick it all onto a USB stick and go home and they lose the USB stick.
Isn't that
entire county or something?
Isn't that exactly what happened? Because you can, these old voting booths, you think about, well, what happens to them after they're done? And the government would like you to think that they're properly decommissioned and they're stripped of all information.
Wrong.
Wasn't there a black hat conference that they purchased an old voting machine off of eBay, and you think, oh boy, a voting machine booth, kind of heading to the largest collection of hackers in the world, and lo and behold, there was voter information on there, but someone just left like a USB stick in the front of it and it had all the records on it, and it was like, that's not proper security protocol, I would imagine. One bought off of eBay. This wasn't even like found. It was sold in that condition. Yeah.
Unfortunately, you're dead right, and that is oh so common. That's part of the problem. When I was talking about Cyberlytica earlier, how you can do like scans for like emails and things, they came out earlier today, a press release I was reading before coming on. I was kind of laughing. It says, cybersecurity firm Cyberlytica identified 25 voter registration databases on the dark web. That is scary. So now you've got millions of people that have voted. Their information is now on the dark web being sold. Who's going to buy that? Well, maybe it's going to be the Russians. Maybe it's the Chinese. Maybe it's Iranians. I have no idea. But it's scary that kind of information is pulled off of old voting machines and packaged and sold on the dark web. And it's scary, to your point, and I think it's kind of comical, that you can buy voting machines on eBay still.
Yeah.
You can buy ATM machines on eBay. There's a lot of things that you can buy, printers and fax machines that are used and older, and oftentimes there's confidential proprietary information in the memory that you can easily pull out and print reports out and retrieve documents. People just don't get it sometimes. They're more concerned about convenience of getting rid of the voting machine, the ATM, the printer, the fax, than wiping it properly or taking a physical sledgehammer and destroying.
Yeah, that's always one of those options that is always on the table. One of our family friends recently switched a phone, and part of my brain was like, oh, you should take that phone, wipe the information from it, and donate it to there are a couple I like, such as taking old cell phones and donating them for like veterans, or donating them for soldiers overseas, or donating them for homeless people and stuff like that. But the other part of me was like, she has a lot of business contacts and a lot of contacts and information she really can't afford to have leak out there. So, and she's like, when I get home, I'm going to pull out the sledgehammer and we're going to shoot a video and I'm going to destroy it. And I'm like, part of me is like, you should definitely do that for no other reason other than it was an old Windows phone. The other part is that, well, it's probably still just the safest option in the back pocket. It's just to take a screw gun and drill through the hard drive. It's foolproof. So, good point there. Although you did remind me, and this is something I wanted to bring up way at the beginning a little while ago, but it had to do with Google, and I'm sure I think this has happened since you were last on, so we didn't get a chance to talk about it. But earlier we were talking about these fines that companies were facing for not disclosing, and how companies were punished for, or not punished severely enough for disclosing early. And then I wanted to bring up the point of Google, where it can also work against someone to be proactive. And it was mostly proactive where Google Plus, I'm sure that you've heard, Scott, Google Plus is shutting down. it only has about a year. I think it's going to be shut down sometime in the next year, and then it's I think Google is going to keep all the data but delete everyone's accounts and things like that. The point is, the reason that they're deleting it was the backlash from disclosing a vulnerability that was found within Google that gave people access to a lot of the back-end information, including email addresses, usernames, locations and post history and payment information if you ever, paid for anything on Google+. It had a lot of that linked in, and Google found it in a self-audit. I believe they either, obviously contracted someone else out or found it themselves, but they found it, they released the bug, they showed what it was capable of, and they said it was fixed without ever being identified as being used in the wild. You would think that's the proper way to go about this. That is good. But by releasing that, they had, again, the PR nightmare and then the subsequent deletion of Google+. What did you think about that? Because, and more about the fact that they tried to do it right. They fixed it, they shared it, they didn't keep it secret, and they were still, kind of shot in the foot.
Well, I think it was right to come clean and let people know, and I think it's also important to look ahead, or look into the future, I should say. What if they didn't do it? A big part of their challenge, I think, with the Google Plus is that it was really accessed by third-party app developers that had access to all the Gmail content. So now what happens is, if there is a breach, it could be through one of these third parties that could turn into a devastating mess. Case in point, look at Facebook with Cambridge Analytica. There was a third party that had a lot of access to proprietary information within Facebook and Facebook Messenger and this and that. So I think the same thing happens. It's all the unknown, which would cost 10 times more money than just coming clean and saying, hey, there's a breach, or there's a problem here with privacy, users' data could be accessed, we had to pull this down, we think it's the best thing, blah, 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 blah. If you look in some of their statements also, they did also slip in there was very low usage, there wasn't much customer engagements, there was a whole list of other litany that's spelled out, which tells me they don't make money with it, or don't make enough money with it, versus risking what they could potentially lose because of all these third-party agreements they have with them.
Yeah, that was the other part. Some people did speculate that by releasing these hacks by releasing these vulnerabilities, which again they completely sealed up beforehand, but it kind of masked the understory, which, as you said, no one really used Google+. I think I saw a pretty funny article that said that even Google+, the people in charge of Google+, their last Google+ posts were like 2 to 3 years prior to it being shut down. Yeah, even the higher ups weren't using it. So Google+ going away, but I did find that interesting. And thank you, of course, on your comment on that. Let's see. We have about 5 minutes left, if that. Let's talk about patients' medical identities. And if we have time, we can jump into the businesses. But let's talk about that one.
Okay. I think it's a kind of a different or interesting spin again there. We think about when people compromise information, but now focus to medical information. And they identified a term in here I've never heard of, and I kind of got a chuckle out of it and thought about it a little bit more. And the term in this article is called synthetic identity theft. And they basically define it as, it means little pieces of data from all over the place to create a new identity. The hacker may not take the entire thing, but can stitch together an identity and credit report or medical record of a person's, and then really rip off the healthcare system. And part of the value of healthcare records versus just, stolen credit card, you can sell for $3 on the dark web. A stolen medical data from somebody, you can get between $50 to $100. That amount has come down greatly from what it was, but to me, that's still a lot more value that you can get out of stolen medical data than just a stolen credit card, when you see the contrast there. And why is the price of all this coming down? Is because there's so many millions and millions of medical records that have been stolen. It's a supply and demand, and the dark web is filled with millions of credit cards and thousands of stolen medical data records there. So I think that's what's starting to happen there. The sea is getting flooded with it. And the other thing is it's really hard to know. The medical community is fighting back and saying, well, the data's safe. There's no evidence that any of the data was compromised, even though we suffered a breach like Anthem or others that have come out with. But guess what? What they're finding out is your entire file is not what's necessarily being used. It's these bits and pieces where they're calling it this synthetic identity theft. That's what thieves are smartly doing. They're taking a bit from this stolen thing, a bit that they buy here and a bit here, and packaging it together. And why? It's because it's so hard to catch the bad guy now. It's really difficult. There's no breadcrumbs to trace the bad guy when they're putting all these pieces together and then performing a hack. And it makes hackers emboldened because they realize, wow, we can do a lot more with these lists and lists of databases, putting information together and creating further compromises and insurance fraud and medical theft and so on and so forth. Scary stuff.
It's in some ways it's almost enterprising, to create new identities altogether that obviously, like you said, you can't be traced back to a singular breach or even a singular person. It's almost enterprising that they are literally making a product that is better than the alternative. If these people were really interested in making money, I'm sure that a lot of them could find very easy work, doing something legitimate. But and by the way, at the end of the article here, it has a very, very nice checklist. And at the same time, we have a lot of guests on the show that talk about, Hipaa compliance, and they talk about, how to best handle data. They take it very, very seriously. My problem, though, is the same problem I have with Google, with Facebook, with any other agency that collects data, and more so with medical, because that's a lot of their data you can't change. You can't change your blood type. You can't change your your face and your medical history. You can't change that kind of stuff. So it's even more sensitive. It's that they have permission through either those long pages that you don't read, that they will sell your information to advertisers or to medical supply companies or to debt collectors. They'll, just like, again, Facebook and Google, they have free range to send your data to wherever they feel is most prudent. And then your identity is then at the hands of people you never made an agreement with, just like banks and, loan officers and things like that. You never sign an agreement, but you're trusting your data to people you've never met.
Yeah.
So, yep, it's scary, and unfortunately, Scott, I don't think we have too much time unless, let's see, you have a link here. We're going to include it in the show notes. But Northern New Jersey chapter of the NKBANNJ. Just real quick, if you just wanted to describe what people would find in this last link that we didn't get to cover, what's there?
Yeah, absolutely. I was able to give a keynote back on October 9th, and this was really up at Pine Brook, New Jersey. Sub-Zero and Wolf, high-end appliance manufacturers, they brought in all their partners for the entire chapter. And it was an awesome event because I was able to talk a lot about IoT, getting into our appliances at home. And again, these are mostly high-end appliances. Everything has got wireless connectivity, data gathering, and basically I was able to share some of the fears that I have and tips with them to keep their data safe and be careful before they plug their refrigerator, their stove, their whatever into the internet, and understand what the consequences possibly could be. So it was a great event and got to talk a lot about just basic practices, keeping safe for all the builders and the designers that were there present.
Makes perfect sense. So the music playing in the background, Scott, means that we're just about done here. I want to thank you for your time, as always, and this is a lot of fun. I think next month, unfortunately, I need to triple check my calendar. I actually have it here. No, wait, actually, no, you're good. You're back the week after Thanksgiving you're good to go. So, everyone, Scott Schober, author, Hacked Again. We have links to his website and everything else. Scott, I want to say thank you, and have a great one.
Thank you. You too.
All right.
Take care and stay safe.
Yep, we'll do. Everyone, and thank you for tuning into Computer America. Have a great day yourselves, and hey, happy Halloween. Be, be safe, be good, and catch you here next time. Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye-bye.